Bill be read a second time. The Honourable Ben Dawkins.
Thank you, Acting President. I'm just rising shortly, very briefly today. I do think the Honourable Neil Thompson has covered off on some very valid points. We do know from, and I think the Honourable Steve Martin actually mentioned in a member statement, I could be wrong, but just Main Roads already has a very dominant and you might say inflexible and also powerful position in this state, especially in the country when, in the regions when trying to get approvals for things, shall we say. Main Roads are quite a prickly, you might say, organisation to deal with at times. What this bill does, it does seem to embark upon granting a whole new set of powers, and we can go about those in detail. I would, and we will get into detail obviously when we go clause by clause. I am just trying to, in this place, in my limited time, or my short time so far, trying to understand the dynamics here. The Honourable Neil Thompson has, from what it would seem, outlined a whole heap of areas within the bill that would be worthy of potentially proposing amendments to. However, which is the part I find a little bit confusing, is we're also, the opposition is already saying that they're going to support this bill. So I don't know how to reconcile those two things, all the problems we've identified and the fact that it's just appears to be going to be passed through, you might say, by the opposition. I'll just use by way of example, just very briefly, Acting President. I did hear the Honourable Steve Thomas on the radio during the week, or last week, was it? Last week, talking about the Office of the Auditor-General Amendment Bill and some of the problems with that bill that are now coming to light. However, it was supported at the time by the Liberal Party, and my concern here is that there's not much point raising problems once the bill gets assented to and these problems start to emerge and have impacts on our community, such as with the Office of the Auditor-General at the moment, and the concerns about her powers being curtailed. So let's get it right when the bill is before the House, please, and it seems from much of what the Honourable Neil Thompson has said that is going to be happening. I did want to say that this is also, it appears to be a trend in my short time in this place, Acting President, that there are instances in this state of the public service potentially having excessive influence on the executive. I don't know how these bills come to be, and I'm talking about work cover and the Workers' Compensation Bill and this bill, where public authorities seem to be having an influence on the writing of the Act. There is a separation of powers issue here, and I think that I'm heartened by the fact that I know that the Honourable Steve Thomas will be talking on this bill and about some of the measures that may be put in place, especially as the Main Roads Authority seems to be moving in some respects towards a government trading enterprise. And I'm hoping that the Honourable Brad Pettit can see the proper way to, and we'll speak about the proper way for government to operate and not to enter into commercial activities, at least not without proper constraints being put in place. So moving on very briefly, so we're talking about, generally speaking, I do have the clauses and I have asked questions previously on this, but we're talking about additional commercial activities, collecting additional levies in this bill, from what I can understand, profit sharing, which is quite scary, the conflicts of interest and that might create. I have been lucky enough to have a property lawyer on my staff, and there are significant issues raised here with regard to land tenure, subdivision and registration of property interests. All of these things are a little bit, on the face of it, a bit murky, and I'm hoping that my friends on this side of the House will be able to delve down into these clauses as we move into the committee stage, and maybe reassure us that this is not a bill that's going to then, when it receives assent, going to be one that we're all going to be having to question when our constituents realise the impact of these changes. And so let's nip it in the bud now, if we can, please, is what my request is to this side of the House, or at least propose amendments. The Minister for Transport in general, obviously when she was, when the Honourable Rita Saffioti was the Planning Minister, certainly showed a propensity to be somewhat pro-development, and I see parallels with this, with the creation of a quasi, I say, government trading enterprise. And so I do have concerns about how this government does seem to overreach in these bills that come before the House. I mean, it's probably a little bit by stealth in a sense, because it's Main Roads Amendment Act, which probably doesn't sound that sexy, but it's certainly, there may be some devil in the detail. It wasn't one that jumped off the page, let's say, until my staff property lawyer with a property lawyer background started to delve into some of these clauses. You can imagine the ethical conflicts of interest that arise with things like profit sharing, and as the Honourable Neil Thompson referred to. The ethical conflicts that could arise with government effectively going into the space of big business. We're well aware of those ethical conflicts that can arise, and to the extent that we can, I think we should be turning our ethical and legal minds to what this, to make sure we're not creating a monster here. So again, I'll let the other honourable members have their say, but I do question the idea of, at this early stage, simply saying we'll be supporting a bill, because what comes through the committee phase may be that some of these provisions that we think, on the face of it, go beyond what is reasonable and safe, may be exposed in the committee stage, and it may be that amendments are required.
The question is the bill